Personally, I'd love to see Deebo Samuel back with the Washington Commanders in 2026, but if we're being honest, and if David Blau is going to be different than Cliff Kingsbury and pull a little bit more from his past, there may not be room for Deebo in the new offense.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network. I'm David Harrison, your guy on the ground, credentialed member of the media covering the Washington Commanders for WUSA 9, also writing for Commanders on SI, and here with you 5 days a week. On today's episode, we are going to play a little bit of a game. Hat tip to the guys at Locked On Bengals for inspiring this episode idea. We're going to call it Sign or Walk. We got 3 veterans, Zach Ertz, Austin Ekeler, and Deebo Samuel. We're going to take a look at the current roster options, free agents who could threaten to take their roster spots for each and every one. And then I'm going to let you choose. Are you going to let them walk, or are you going to sign them back to the roster? All starting off with Deebo Samuel coming up first. All of that coming up on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And it is all brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is, of course, in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. First up on our first iteration of Sign or Walk, I feel like we're going to do multiple iterations of this probably throughout the offseason, maybe a few different versions where we give you 3 or so free agent targets for an opening that we identify and let you choose which ones to sign. But first up, we're going to talk about Deebo Samuel, the receiver that a lot of people thought might tear apart the Washington Commanders locker room when he was traded for from the San Francisco 49ers, ended up being one of the most consistently positive members of it, despite a 5-win season. Of course, Deebo came in and showed off on the field, I should say, really early, as early as OTAs, seeing him and Jaden Daniels kind of get into a little bit of an early rhythm. Unfortunately, Jaden unable to stay healthy. Terry McLaurin unable to stay healthy to provide that #1 receiver top coverage to allow Deebo to get open more in the underneath game. The offensive scheme kind of stalled out and got stale. So just a lot of things really working against Deebo as far as like hitting the aspirations that we had for him entering the season. This year, Deebo will be 30 years old, just turned 30 this January. So this will be his 30-year-old season, if you want to call it that. And if you let him walk, if that is your decision as a decision maker in this episode, you're going to then eat $12.3 million in dead cap money. If you remember, Deebo came to the Washington Commanders with a little bit of money left on his deal that he had signed with the San Francisco 49ers. The Washington Commanders general manager Adam Peters restructured that contract to lower the 2025 cap hit number that Deebo Samuel carried for the team. And because of that, moved a little bit of money into some void years. And so that brings $12.3 million in dead money to life if the Washington Commanders don't re-sign Deebo Samuel. If they do re-sign Deebo Samuel, that $12.3 million in void year money can then be incorporated into that new contract. And then again, you can spread the cap hits out for David Blau as far as, so that's the money side of it. As far as the fit side of it, right? We don't know exactly what a David Blau offense is going to look like. Of course, you're going to hear me repeat that many times this offseason because that's just the God's honest truth. But if we look at his history, we look at the idea that, you know, it definitely seems to me that the Washington Commanders moved on from Cliff Kingsbury because they wanted something different than what Cliff Kingsbury was doing. Something different could be an indication of David Blau's exposure to the Ben Johnson 2021 Detroit Lions offense, the Kevin O'Connell offense. There's a lot of schools that David Blau has attended as a quarterback and as a NFL mind. So when we look back at some of those structures, especially that Lions structure that I think a lot of people are really kind of attaching to, you have 2 really distinct roles in that Ben Johnson Lions offense. One of them being the power slot receiver that was played by Amon-Ra St. Brown, 76 targets that year out of the slot position. Then you have the vertical clear out receiver, which in 2021 was played by Khalif Raymond. The thing about Deebo Samuel is he doesn't really fit that vertical role anymore. Now, every day, as you remember me saying that Deebo has downfield ability all last year, screaming for it, hoping for it, and I stand by that. But that's not going to be his role, right? So like Khalif Raymond that vertical clear out, take the top off the defense type of role. That was what he did on a very regular basis. The power slot, being that power forward in the short intermediate part of the field, is what Amon-Ra St. Brown did on a regular basis. Deebo can do both of those things, just not on a regular basis. That can't be his permanent role, is what we're saying. So Luke McCaffrey is someone that we talked about already this offseason, potentially being that power slot. Not that I'm going to sit here and predict that he's going to have an Amon-Ra St. Brown, 90 catch, 1,000-yard receiving season, 6 touchdown type of breakout in 2026. Just that might be a role that he fits in this new David Blau type of system. So obviously Deebo's not going to play that position. He's not going to play that vertical position. So what are the reasons to sign him? So here are the reasons that I see to potentially sign him if you want to take that side of the argument. Is that one, he brings a dynamic to the offense that maybe David Blau doesn't have in his playing history, doesn't have certainly in the coaching history as much, but it can still be valuable. As much as we saw Cliff Kingsbury's offense get a little bit stale, one of the things that Deebo was really good at doing was turning behind the line of scrimmage passes into production. 358 yards after catch is what Deebo Samuel produced in passes that were caught behind the line of scrimmage. It's an insurance policy. It's a quick out. It can be a hot read. It can be part of your strategy. And we saw it, especially there a couple times at the end of the season. It can be effective when it's incorporated into part of a grander scheme. When it's the focal point of your scheme, obviously it's not going to be as effective, but it certainly can still be effective. And I think Deebo, given the opportunity to do that, but also given the opportunity to sprinkle in some of those intermediate area type of things, sprinkle in some of those deep routes and get vertical up the field to keep defenses honest in how they defend him, I think that could certainly help, along with a guy like Luke McCaffrey playing that power slot role, and then maybe somebody taking off the top. But the problem is you have to go, one, find that guy. Two, you have to kind of look into Deebo. Is he going to really be able to be as impactful as you want him to be, especially for the money, which is projected right now to be about $20 million per year. So you're going to pay about $20 million per year if you re-sign Deebo Samuel, according to SpotTrack's current projections for a 30-year-old receiver in his best season in 2021, ironically enough, because that's the Lions offense that we're kind of using as our benchmark for this episode. Deebo averaged 26.7 yards per reception on deep passes, but hasn't really ever been the deep receivers like that since. So again, the question is, can you get him there? And can you get him there to the point where you're willing to pay him $20 million? Or do you just eat the $12 million and let him walk? Well, Deebo Samuel, again, saw 38 targets behind the line of scrimmage in 2025. Now that's going to steal easy touches from some running backs. That's kind of incorporating into other positions here. And that's going to kind of clog the middle for that power slot. One of the keys to that power slot position is having the room to operate in there. If you've got another receiver near or at the line of scrimmage, that's going to keep the defense closer to the line of scrimmage into that box, which impacts that power slot receiver position like what Luke McCaffrey has. So if you really want to take advantage of that power slot position, like the 2021 Lions did under Ben Johnson, while David Blau was a quarterback with the Detroit Lions, you really need a receiver more like Rashid Shaheed, who is a pending free agent out of the Seattle Seahawks organization. So you can watch him this weekend in the NFC Championship game. And instead of re-signing Deebo Samuel for about $20 million a year, Rashid Shaheed's price tag is about $10 million per year. Combine that with the $12.3 million in dead cap, you're looking at roughly $20 to $22 million per year for Rashid Shaheed in that first year. And then, of course, in the, however many years you sign him for, the next years will go down. But for this year, you could basically get Deebo for about that $20 million a year mark, or you can get Rashid Shaheed for about $10 million, combine it with the dead cap. You're basically breaking even. But what Rashid Shaheed brings that Deebo doesn't is pure vertical speed and ability. And when you look at the first 15 scripted plays from David Blau's quarterback career, you see that he likes the ability to attack the defense deep. And so that's kind of something we expect from him. It'll take some pressure off of coverage for Terry McLaurin, which opens up things for him. We know he has ability in the deep game as well, even though he doesn't have the same type of speed that Rashid Shaheed has. And of course, that's going to spread the defense out, open them up a little bit for that power slot Luke McCaffrey to be able to find space in the intermediate parts of the field and on the seams where the tight end can operate, which we'll talk about here in just a little bit. So again, that's the walk option. You let him eat. You're probably targeting a receiver like Rashid Shaheed at about $10 million a year. The total cost is roughly the same, give or take $1 million or $2 million here, but the roster fits better for that more vertical offense, more effective vertical offense that'll attack multiple levels and open up things underneath for opportunity. So let me know what you think the Commanders should do. Do that in the YouTube comment section. Hit me on X at DHarrison82. Of course, if you're an everyday or all access member, you can simply just text me. Are you letting Deebo sign? Are you signing Deebo? Or are you letting Deebo walk? But up next, we're going to move from the area Deebo impacted last year the most to see if there's still room for a running back like Austin Ekeler to make his comeback with Washington in 2026. That and more coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode of Locked On Commanders brought to you in part by Indeed. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important it is to get that right. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. If you're hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs. Put your posts at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. If you need to hire someone for your show, for your business, whatever it is, go straight to Indeed. Be very specific about what you want. Real experience, not just resume buzzwords. And instead of struggling to get your job post seen, Indeed sponsored jobs helps your listing stand out and reach qualified candidates faster. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. So go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now. Support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. Today's episode of Locked On Commanders also brought to you in part by Robinhood. What if sports were traded just like markets? Well, now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market where you can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I've always known the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Well, now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people where you're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood, now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives, LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. Thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day, every day, to the everydayers. Those of you who come through for every single episode, thank you for coming through yet again for this one. And if anybody out there hasn't already, please check out the all-new Everydayer Club. You got member tier, you got all access tier. Both of them come with perks and benefits that I think you would be really, really interested. Just give it a look. LockedOnCommanders.supercast.com to check that out today. Moving on with our sign or walk game. Again, hat tip to the Locked On Bengals podcast. Great idea that I thought was a lot of fun. So I wanted to play this game with you guys here in the offseason. Do you want to sign or do you want to let these players walk? Again, YouTube, social media, text. If you're an all access member, let me know what you want to do with these guys. We just talked about Deebo Samuel. Now let's talk about Austin Ekeler. Coming off of torn Achilles, came to Washington to be part of a two-back system. Left the Los Angeles Chargers organization because he said they wanted a guy who was going to take 300 touches per season. I'm not that guy. I need to be part of a committee. That's what he wanted to do. That's what he was going to do in 2025. It's what he did in 2024. Now, in 2025, it looked like he was still going to do that, but he would be the lead back in that relationship. Unfortunately, ultimately ended up in a season-ending Achilles injury. And now the question is Austin Ekeler going to play again, just period? And if so, does he want to come back with Washington? And then from there, is Washington still a good fit for him in 2026? Now, in 2021, that Detroit Lions offense that we so often look back on for David Blau and try to say, what is David Blau's offense going to look like? The running back was essentially another wide receiver, which is, again, something that Deebo Samuel certainly does, but also kind of takes away from the running back room when the running back is not getting involved in there. It's a different layer of getting the ball carrier the ball. DeAndre Swift in that 2021 season saw 78 targets in just 13 games. Ended up actually being the second highest targeted player on the team. Whether that's by design or not, it's just by design that player is part of the plan. Now, on the current Washington Commanders roster, you have your kind of hammer power type of runner, Chris Rodriguez Jr. He's a restricted free agent, not currently under contract for 2026, but he is a restricted free agent, which means the Commanders can essentially bring him back fairly cheap. So we expect that to probably happen. No hard confirmation that it's going to happen, but the expectation is that it should happen. Croskey-Merritt is your outside zone slasher, one cut type of back. Neither of them has really proven to be a consistent check down option. I believe that both of them have that ability, have that potential in them, but the bottom line truth, and we say every offseason, operate based off what you know, not what you hope. We don't know for a fact that they can provide that. So Austin Ekeler was providing that check down option. In fact, in 2025, up to the moment he got hurt, which I know was in week 2, his average depth of target was -3 yards. So he was a behind the line of scrimmage guy. He's not a threat to catch 78 passes downfield. Deebo Samuel was largely a behind the line of scrimmage guy. So you're taking those pass opportunities away from the running back position, but you're also not even going downfield with them, which is another reason why it all kind of worked against each other. So if you want to be on team sign for Austin Ekeler, one, obviously you're betting on Austin Ekeler actually trying to mount a comeback, which we don't have confirmation of, although I can tell you he is continuing to rehab and work out. He's posting updates on his own social media accounts, things like that, while also helping his wife go through pregnancy and their first child that they're expecting here later this year. But if you're talking about bringing him in, it's because of the efficiency. Again, we only saw Austin Ekeler for 1.5 games before he suffered the torn Achilles against Green Bay Packers. But in that time, he did catch 20 of his 21 targets behind the line of scrimmage. So look at the rate that he was kind of on there. If the offense is going to be aggressive downfield, you still need a guy to play that check down role. And again, you'd rather come from the running back position than from a receiver position, the amount that it did anyway from Deebo Samuel. Austin Ekeler, also incredible veteran. He's got really good pass protection chops, can protect Jaden Daniels, pick up blitzes, do those types of things, and continue to mentor and mold those younger guys who constantly gave Austin Ekeler a lot of praise and credit for being a teacher, being that kind of big brother type of presence in the running back room as well. So some good reasons to sign Austin there in that sense if he is trying to make a comeback in 2026. For team walk, if you're on the walk side of it, it's likely because you like the things that Austin brings, but you want an upgraded him. You just want that better version, that 2.0, that newer model, so to speak. You can still go use, which is what we're going to look at here in the free agent market, because you got 3 options that we're going to label premium, economy, and bargain. Not because we think that like bargain guy is just like not a great back, but just based off of expected salary, again, according to Spot Track. The premium option, Rachaad White, soon to be former Tampa Bay Buccaneer, projected to make $7.4 million per year on his next contract, would be reuniting with quarterback Jaden Daniels. Both of them spent time with the Arizona State Sun Devils in college. Rashad, if you follow him on Twitter, has not been shy about showing that he wants to rejoin Jaden Daniels. So Rashad certainly attracted to Washington. What would attract Washington to Rashad? He's a high-volume receiver that can basically run the DeAndre Swift route tree that the Detroit Lions used in 2021, but of course he would be the most expensive option. And I can tell you, not a problem for him to be a 1B, part of a tandem, part of a trio, even if that's what is smart for the team. Option B, call him the economy, but not because he's going to be any less of a threat, certainly a vertical threat. Travis Etienne, $6.8 million per year projected on his next contract if the Jacksonville Jaguars somehow let him get out of the building. Certainly going to be cheaper than Rachaad White. Faster, has 4.3 speed, rushed for over 1,100 yards in 2025, and he brings home run hitting ability that, honestly, until Croskey-Merritt's 70-plus yard touchdown run, we really haven't seen in Washington for quite some time. So we know Bill has it. Travis Etienne also has it, but he also has that ability to be a third down back, a little bit more proven at least than the guys that are currently on the roster. And then option C, we're calling it the bargain bin, but not because he should be viewed as a cast-off by any means, but the fact that Kenneth Gainwell's projected contract this offseason is going to come in about $2.9 million per year, averages 5.5 yards per carry in 2025, and gave you 80% of the production that some of these other guys got for much less than the price. So that lets you spend that money on a wide receiver like Rashid Shaheed, where if you sign Rashid and you don't sign Deebo, you know that's $20 million total for that one receiver position. Now you go get Kenneth Gainwell for $3 million per year. You're spending $23 million per year on 2 options versus, say, nearly $30 million per year if you combine Deebo with a guy like Rachaad White. So it's just about how much of each guy you really need to incorporate into your offense, and that's what gives you these interesting options. So again, Vote Team S, vote Team W. Are we signing? Are we letting Austin Ekeler walk? But before we get to that, let's get to one last veteran and ask more about the young player behind him that would turn into the future of the tight end position, Ben Sinnott. So that coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode of Locked On Commanders brought to you in part by Drip Drop. Kicking off the year feeling good is the goal for everybody, right? Honestly, hydration is the easiest win, but when you do stay on top of it, energy, focus, your mood all goes up. But let's be real, plain water doesn't always cut it, especially when you're grinding through long days, hitting the gym, or just trying to stay consistent with your health goals. And that's where Drip Drop comes in. It's doctor developed, it's proven fast hydration that helps your body and your mind work better, think clearer focus, better energy, elevated mood, even a refreshed skin glow, if you're into that sort of thing. We've been using Drip Drop as part of our daily routine since they signed up earlier in the year, and it's been a game changer. It's not just for workouts either. It's for every single day when you're just trying to grind through whatever it is you have going on. You can use a precise ratio of electrolytes and glucose for rapid absorption, delivering 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of leading sports drinks. So right now, Drip Drop is offering podcast listeners 20% off your first order. Go to dripdrop.com, use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. That's dripdrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONNFL for 20% off. Stock up now at dripdrop.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL. Today's episode is also brought to you in part by FanDuel. FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. The championship round is upon us. Every game during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action with NFL playoff game day profit boost packs. Every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users, you're going to get a profit boost pack waiting for you inside the FanDuel app. Every game day, you'll see that pack loaded with multiple profit boosts, and you can apply those to the bets you like the most. You open your pack first thing on game day, see which boost you want to apply to which bets, and it lets you lean into your game day instincts rather than trying to force you into bets that you didn't come up with, you don't necessarily agree with, and you don't even necessarily want. It makes your plays even bigger, and the boosts make your bets feel bigger as well. You make your picks, then you apply your profit boost to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs are rolling. So go to FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. The final contestant in our sign or walk game, first iteration of this that we're playing this year, is tight end Zach Ertz, another veteran, another older guy, and I know oldest team in the National Football League, the Washington Commanders in 2025, and certainly that's going to play into some decisions that you make out there. Certainly he's going to play into some decisions that Adam Peters makes this offseason, so I think it's all fair. But Zach Ertz has been great. Obviously, it's, got hurt, missed every game after the Minnesota Vikings game, and obviously wasn't a presence there on the field anyway. Certainly a presence in the building and with the tight end room, I will tell you that. But Zach, for what he was expected to be when the Washington Commanders first signed him in 2024 and what he's been, I think has been a very, very pleasant surprise. Not just on the field, but off the field as well. But the bottom line with Zach Ertz is he was going to retire. He was talking about retiring until Cliff Kingsbury came back to the NFL, came to Washington, called him up and said, hey, dude, let's do this again. And Zach kind of knew like the Cliff Kingsbury offense was a good fit for him, things like that. Well, Cliff Kingsbury no longer in Washington. And again, the presumption that I'm making is that they hired David Blau to be a different Cliff Kingsbury, right? Like different than Cliff Kingsbury. Certainly going to see some Cliff Kingsbury elements, right? David Blau learning from that offense that he played in and also coached in for 2 years, but you're expected to see some new elements. Those new elements, however, like we talked about with Deebo, could potentially move certain players who are a little bit limited in their versatility and what they can do out of the system, including a guy like Zach Ertz. David Blau, from what we kind of project, needs a tight end that can attack the seams of the defense 10 to 19 yards downfield. That's not really Zach Ertz's wheelhouse. Zach Ertz is more dominant in the short area where he had 72 targets in 2025, but was virtually non-existent in the other parts of the field. So if you're looking to make a case to sign Zach Ertz, what are you probably looking at? Well, first and foremost, Jaden Daniels trusts him. Jaden Daniels loves him. Jaden Daniels uses him as a safety blanket. And with a new offensive coordinator, you really love to have that safety blanket for your quarterback that he has confidence in as he's trying to learn the new system as well, especially a guy who's a veteran, great leader in the locker room, and can help a quarterback kind of get up to speed on this new language, on these new offenses, things like that, trying not to create a hole just for the sake of getting younger. But if your team walk, you're probably looking at Ben Sinnott, right? If you think Ben Sinnott's future is going to be great with the Washington Commanders, then what does he need? He needs the opportunity to showcase what he can do. And what have we heard for the last 2 years about Ben Sinnott's lack of usage is that it's hard to get a young tight end on the field when you've got a future Hall of Famer like Zach Ertz standing in front of him. Get it, but if Zach Ertz is no longer standing in front of him, then perhaps he can get those opportunities. Also, if David Blau is looking for a seam-dominant tight end receiver type of guy, Ben Sinnott could be that guy a lot more than Zach Ertz is likely to be that guy, especially in 2026, because you're not talking about prime Zach Ertz here. You're talking about mid-30s Zach Ertz coming off of a torn ACL, probably not even going to be healthy enough to start the season in the first place. But there's also some free agent options if the Washington Commanders just aren't sold yet on Ben Sinnott. Yet they want to bring in, so they want to bring another tight end, but they also don't want to bring Zach Ertz back if you're in team walk. David Njoku is going to cost you right around $10 million per year on a new contract, according to Spot Track. He's really been adept with the Cleveland Browns, turning checkdowns into touchdowns. Definitely has the violence after catch, big bruising type of tight end. Then you've got Kyle Pitts, who's going to cost about $14 million. Came into the NFL billed as basically a really big wide receiver, and it's kind of what he's been for the Atlanta Falcons. Allows you to run some of those vertical route concepts, air raid things that Cliff Kingsbury taught, all those types of things out of 12 personnel. So now you can come out in 12 personnel and you might be running, you might be throwing, expands the offense a little bit, certainly can take advantage of the seams. And if you talk about a guy like Rashid Shaheed taking the lid off the defense, you got Terry McLaurin on the other side with all the things that he can do. Now you've got a guy like Kyle Pitts running down the field as well, who can run intermediate, short, and deep type of routes as well. Then you got your power slot and Luke McCaffrey. That's a pretty decent array of weapons for a guy like David Blau to use and for Jaden Daniels to target. And then, of course, you've got the next former Eagle to become a Washington Commanders tight end, Dallas Goedert, who is projected to make about $6 million per year on his new deal. Basically the same price as Zach Ertz, but younger and a better blocker overall than Zach Ertz was. So if you're keeping Zach, there's a lot of safety reasons, a lot of leadership reasons, a lot of comfort reasons to keep him. But if you're letting him walk, signing one of these guys, or if you know that Ben Sinnott is that next guy for the Washington Commanders, maybe you just go that direction. Personally, I don't know that, so I'm looking at one of these other free agent options as well to bring into the fold. So that's going to do our first episode of Sign or Walk. Let me know again who you would sign, who you would let walk, and for what reasons. Hit the YouTube comments. Find me on social media at dharrison82 on X. Or if you're an Everydayer Club All Access member, just shoot me a text and let me know what you think. Make sure you're subscribed and follow along for Locked On Commanders for the next time we do this type of thing, or for all the future episodes to come. And if you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club, quite literally, it's in the name, built for you, the Everydayer. Go to Locked On Commanders, lockedoncommanders.com. Nope. Go to lockedoncommanders.supercast.com to check out the Everydayer Club and see if it piques your interest for your next listen. Check out the Locked On NFL podcast twice per day, once in the morning, once in the afternoon on YouTube or wherever you're listening to today's show. To the Everydayers, I see you. I appreciate you every single day. And I thank you again for coming through today. For everybody out there, thank you for coming through, of course. But until next time, please stay safe, be kind to one another. We'll talk again real soon right here on Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.